Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at the game Nioh, if I'm saying it, or no, if I'm saying, I think it's the name's Nioh. Nioh 2 for the PlayStation 4. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll link down in the description down below, and you can check that out. In 2017, Koei Tecmo, along with Team Ninja and Sony that handled the publishing side of things, released Nioh. Basically, this was Koei Tecmo's take on the Souls-like games, which have been dominated mostly by, From Software with games like Dark Souls and even Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. I remember playing that game back in 2017, and to me, it is fun. And in fact, as far as Soul-like goes game, though, compared to Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Code Vein, and Sekiro, don't get me wrong, those are all good games. I'm not saying those games are necessarily bad, but I liked Nioh the most, mostly because I got a bit of sort of like that Onimusha vibe, something that I really wish Capcom would bring back that series as well. Plus, I just liked the combat and everything about it, though. It was definitely a fun game and so forth. Well, now, I think 3 years later, 27, 20, 19, 20, yeah, 3 years later, though, Koei Tecmo, along with Team Ninja and Sony handling the publishing side of it, have come back with a sequel, or should I say prequel, Nioh 2, taking place before the events of the first Nioh, though. And while most of the gameplay is still the same and everything like that, there are some new mechanics that they added to this game that is basically sort of very interesting, and the game is still as fun as it was like the first one was. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pros. And the first one has to do with the gameplay. I would say from the gameplay perspective, it's solid, and it follows pretty much everything from the first Nioh game. You have your high stance, medium stance, and low stance. High stance does a lot of damage, but takes out a lot of Kai. Medium stance is sort of like the well balanced, and low stance you could do like multiple hits and doesn't take as much Kai, take much of your stamina, or Kai is another way to call it, but doesn't do maybe not as much damage as say like the medium or high and all that stuff. And of course, you have the option of, there are plenty of weapons out there. I go with the samurai sword. I just find that much easier to use and so forth. But they also added some new gameplay features as well. Some of this is that since the story revolves around you being sort of like a yokai and all, you have the ability to use certain yokai abilities. This could come in handy in terms of like dealing with certain enemies and so forth. So basically, there might be yokai that does this ability to freeze you in place. You could take that. You might get like a yokai core or a demon core, and you could take their ability and use it on the enemies and so forth. Though other features, that's pretty much one of the new features. Though it adds a little bit of a purple bar right next to your energy and your stamina as well. So there are certainly some new gameplay mechanics to kind of fool around with. Oh, and also I also forgot to mention this as well. You also have the ability of, like those little red things or like those red like graves where basically you could fight other players that may have died or anything like that when you're playing online. Though you now have ability to leave a blue grave where if you get a certain item, I think it's like a cup or something, you can use that to call upon that player right there and basically have them assist you and so forth. Very similar to how it was in the first one, where you can ask other players to come and aid you and all that stuff. Although you can also leave a spot right there as well for other players to use. So it's the same gameplay from the first one, but with some new features and so forth. And some of those new features are certainly interesting and all. The next one I do want to talk about is the return of the graphic options. Now, one of the neatest features that the Nioh added in the first one was it gave you a choice of either playing this in action mode or movie mode. Movie mode had the game running at 1080p, but had it at 30 frames per second, while you had 720p at 60 frames per second. Would like to point out I'm basing this off of the base PS4 version though. I thought that was really neat and so forth, and I opted to go with the 60 frames per second though. Would have been nice to have it at 1080p at 60, but if I had to choose between visuals or solid frame rate, I go with a steady, solid 60 frames per second though. And that option, of course, returns with its sequel and so forth though. You do basically have the option to play it in movie mode or action mode. Like the first one, I opt to go with action mode though, maintaining that 60 frames per second. So it's nice that that option has returned as well. And last but not least, like the first game though, the game definitely maintains that Onimusha vibe to it though. You know, the idea of fighting, you know, these yokais and demons and so forth, though, that still, you know, remains much like when the original Onimusha came out back in 2001, which many dubbed at the time called it Resident Evil with samurais though. And so it still maintains that Onimusha vibe, and that certainly is a good thing though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we're going to get to part 2, which are the cons. So we'll take a break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of Nioh 2 for the PlayStation 4. So now that I gave you my pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are only really 2 cons I could think of in regards of Nioh 2. I don't think they're huge cons in any way. Some might disagree and all that stuff, but they are worth pointing out. The first thing I do want to point out is the frame rate. Now, I will say when playing this in action mode, you know, at 720p 60 frames per second on my base PS4, the frame rate runs very well. I haven't really had huge issues with the frame rate or anything like that. There are occasions, sometimes, I did see the frame rate kind of dip, but just for a tiny bit. It's not huge or anything like that. For the most part, it's still stable, but there are some occasions when the frame rate does kind of dip though. But like I said, luckily it's not a huge dip, it's not a major dip, or I haven't seen any pop up during like any major battles against any of the enemies and so forth. So yes, there are some small frame rate dips even in action mode, but nothing that made the game like unplayable or anything like that. And the last con I do want to talk about, and this one has mostly to do with, you know, your preference and, you know, like what type of game you're into, and that is this is the Souls-like difficulty, especially if you hate or anything like that. As with the first Nioh though, and as with games like Code Vein and Bloodborne, those games follow, you know, the Souls-like formula. These are games that can be challenging and can be difficult though, and does require some patience and trial and error. And the enemies, if you're not careful, can be difficult and all that. Some people may have an issue with this and don't like the gameplay mechanics though. Others may enjoy it as well. Personally, I'm not the biggest Souls-like fan out there though, but Nioh I feel is like the best Souls-like game out there, and I still enjoy the gameplay nevertheless. That said though, the difficulty might turn some people off though, but if you handle the first Nioh, then you'll probably handle Nioh 2. Oh, excuse me. Overall, Nioh 2 is definitely a fun game and definitely a recommendation if you have a PS4 and so forth. It follows the same formula from the first one and adds some new features such as the ability to use yokai, if I'm saying the name correctly, yokai abilities and all that stuff, the graphic options, returns and all that stuff, and it still maintains that Onimusha vibe though. Yes, the frame rate can dip a little bit at times depending on what the situation is. The Souls-like difficulty might turn some people off, but you know what? I still enjoyed Nioh 2. It is still a fun game indeed. It's definitely a recommendation, especially if you have a PS4 and so forth though. I definitely would love to see Koei Tecmo do a Nioh 3. That certainly would be nice, although I would love for them to do a Ninja Gaiden trilogy or a brand new Ninja Gaiden game. I mean, that I definitely would like to see Team Ninja do. But my final take on it is that Nioh 2 is definitely worth getting for your PS4. And if you like those Souls-like games, though, this is definitely one to pick up, especially if the PS4 is your main system of choice. Okay, this concludes my video review of Nioh 2 for the PS4. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Nioh 2? Did you pick the game up? Are you enjoying Nioh 2? Did you like the first one and decide to get this one? Did you didn't like the first one and decide to skip it? Or you didn't like the first one but want to give this one a try, though? Do you like some of the new gameplay mechanics in the game, though? Are you having issues with any of the frame rate? Do you think the dips are bad or not as bad as some people make it claim it is? Do you like the Souls-like difficulty? Do you not like the Souls-like difficulty? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description down below. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!